If you were a Sega fan during the 1980s and 90s, chances are you remember Golden Axe fairly well. Whether in the arcade, the Genesis, or the Master System, it had multiple ports, sequels, and spin-offs you've possibly played and at least heard of before. Of those, the original coin-op was a major hit for Sega and ported to numerous platforms. It was a hack-and-slash beat-em-up set in the fantasy world of Uria, where the evil Death Adder had captured the king, stolen the Golden Axe, and terrorizes the land. Three heroes have decided enough is enough and begin an all-out assault on Death Adder and his minions. Each hero had their own fighting style and magical abilities, and it featured two-player co-op. The Genesis version was a fairly accurate take on the arcade given the hardware differences, and even had an additional stage and final boss added to increase the value proposition. While not perfect, it set the standard for the other ports to follow and is fondly remembered by an entire generation. In Japan, another home port was released for the PC Engine CD-ROM by Telenet Japan in 1990. I remember being really excited to play this version back then after seeing it in the import ads in the back of my favorite magazines. But when I finally did, I couldn't believe what I was experiencing. It wasn't unusual for PC Engine Sega ports to have a bit of their own personality. Games like Shinobi and Gain Ground took their own liberties with the source material. But Golden Axe was, in a word, shocking. In this episode, we will go over the PC Engine CD version of Golden Axe, see how it stood up against the arcade and Genesis editions, and decide if it's something you need to play. I hope you guys enjoy my review of Golden Axe for the PC Engine CD. The story here marks one of the major additions to this version of Golden Axe. It's done via voice-acted cinematics to set up everything that happens. These actually look great and add an additional layer to an otherwise simple game. You don't just get an intro either. Cinematics set up the resurrection of Death Adder, how he did each hero wrong, your final meeting with him, and you get an ending depicting his demise. This is in addition to the traditional story segments from the arcade. It's a nice bonus that sets it apart from the other versions right from the start. From there you get the same three choices of heroes you did in the arcade: Axe Battler, Tyrus Flare, and Gilius Thunderhead. Each one has an elemental magic attack that depends on your store of magical pots. Tyrus has fire, Gilius has lightning, and Axe Battler volcanic earth. Each hero has different levels of power with their magic. Gilius is weak, Axe Battler is strong, and finally Tyrus is the most potent. Magical pots are dropped by elves both during and in between each stage. Weapon combat is simple and relies on quick strike combos to down your enemies. You can also jump attack, strike behind you, and pull off a running shoulder block. There are also creatures in many of the areas that you can ride to take advantage of. These allow increased damage via both melee and projectile based options. The stage setup will be familiar to arcade and Genesis veterans and is mostly accurate in their layout. It doesn't have the extra content of the latter, but it does have most of the same enemies and boss encounters. Unfortunately, this is only a single player experience on the PC Engine. Sitting down to Golden Axe on the PC Engine CD for the first time, you have certain expectations for the visuals. The platform had done a bang-up job with many of Sega's other franchises, so you'll be lured into thinking the same thing would be true here. And you'd be wrong on a profoundly disappointing level. This is a soul-crushing take on the graphics seen in the arcade, and even on the Genesis. The backgrounds are simple, the sprites are small and poorly animated, and even the magic effects are done by completely removing the stage visuals while they play out. What started off with some colorful cinematics that look great quickly devolves into a presentation that makes NES games look next generation. You'll even get less sprites on the screen at the same time. Each area remains identifiable, but the cutbacks are stark and well below what this hardware was capable of. It really is quite amazing because Shinobi, another System 16 arcade port, really shows that the PC Engine could do it so much better. A quick comparison of this against the Genesis version shows that Sega's machine was given a ton more care in the conversion. More detailed sprites, better environmental color, and the magical attacks are on a completely different level. If this was your first introduction to Golden Axe or the PC Engine itself, it would have you thinking it was just an awful looking title on profoundly weak hardware. The budget and manpower on this release must have been tiny because it's very clear every bit of effort went into the cinematics and voiceovers. The sound and music in Golden Axe for the PC Engine CD is a mixed bag. On one hand, some of the CD tracks here are actually really good, but even that is ruined by some truly awful sound effects. I mean, some of this is just random generated garbage that doesn't even try to sound like the original. It's typical for hardware of this era to have its own unique take where ports are concerned, but you have to think this hardware was capable of so much better. Here's a few examples of the CD selection to see what it gets right. I've already given you a clear idea of where I stand on this as far as graphics and sound are concerned, but the real issue here is gameplay. A game can look and sound like complete garbage, but as long as it's fun, who really cares? Not so here. Along with its problems in presentation, it also plays nothing like the arcade on which it's based. Again, you expect a little difference in the feel of gameplay, given the hardware differences. I mean, even the Genesis feels a bit unique in this regard. But the PC Engine CD port features completely different hitboxes on the enemies, on you, on the creatures you can ride, and even on the elves that give you magic and life. The physics are all different as well. The run feels off, the jump feels heavy and choppy, and the speed of everything feels like it's based on a completely different game. What that means is that this isn't the Golden Axe as most of you know it. This is called Golden Axe, but the experience is something all its own. And let's be clear, that something is not a good game by any stretch. Heck, it's not even average. There are similar and better playing titles on this platform by orders of magnitude. There's even far less enemy encounters than there should be within each stage, making an already short game feel emptier. Completely gone is the smooth flowing combat that endeared this franchise to millions on the Genesis, and it's even missing many of the attack animations outside of the basic combo. What's left is a mere shell that really makes you wonder why it all went so badly. I have a feeling the story behind this is far more interesting than the end product. It very well may be the worst version of Golden Axe available, and that really is saying something. Some of you may be asking, am I being too hard on this version of the game? Absolutely not. I know many out there love janky versions of arcade games, but there is just no excuse why this ended up as bad as it did on hardware that was capable of so much more. The only positive in this release are some of the musical tracks, with pretty much everything else a complete letdown to all but the most dedicated PC Engine apologist. And the thing is, this was a full price release in 1990, coming in at nearly 7,000 yen, so you can't even make the excuse that it was cheap. Telenet Japan released a number of games for the PC Engine, including the Columns port and some of the Valis series, so you know they understood what a decent game was. This was nothing but a quick and dirty conversion they charged full price for because it was on the CD format. I can't imagine anyone genuinely having fun with this mess, so if you want to play Golden Axe proper, be sure to chase down the arcade original or at least stick to the Sega Genesis version. I realize there are home computer ports of this game out there that are often cited for being not so great themselves, but this is easily the worst home version of this title to hit a major console. It's understandable why it was left in Japan and never brought to the TurboGrafx in the US. For what it's worth, don't let this get you down on Sega ports for the PC Engine. None of them are arcade perfect, of course, but they are quite a bit better than this travesty. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.